My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Seething didn't begin to cover it. Emily should have been home an hour ago. Another, late meeting, stretching past any sane workday. Her excuse was paper thin. Her voice tinged with that forced cheeriness that was starting to set my teeth on edge. Don't wait up, honey, she chirped earlier. I waited. All right. I waited. Parked down the block from that overpriced bistro where her so-called client meetings seemed to magically coincide with happy hour. It had taken me way too long to stop making excuses for her. Way too long to admit the gnawing dread in the pit of my stomach had some damn good reasons for being there. The bistro door swung open, and there she was, laughing like those hyenas in that Disney movie our son used to love. But she wasn't with a gaggle of stuffy coworkers. It was him, Jason, Mr. Armani's suit and his stupid, perfect hair. I watched his hands slide a little too low on her back as they strolled down the street, her head thrown back, that snooty laugh echoing in the cold night air. You see, Jason wasn't just some random coworker. He was the guy all the women at parties flocked to, Emily included. The jokes they shared, the looks that lingered just a second too long. I wasn't an idiot, but until now, it was stuff I could brush off, ignore, downplay it in my own head. Seeing them like this, it was a sucker punch. Rage pulsed through me, hot and blinding. Then, as if a switch flipped, an icy calm took over. See, I'm not the confrontational type. Never have been. Shouting matches, slamming doors, that's not me. But that night, something shifted. I wasn't about to let Emily make me a fool. I started the car, pulling out into traffic. No point going home now. That perfect little house she'd spent so much time decorating, the carefully planned dinners, the pretense of a happy marriage, it all felt like a bad joke. My hands clenched around the steering wheel as a crazy kind of plan started forming in my head. If Emily wanted to play games, then fine. Two could play that game. Emily's phone was a grenade in my hands, the pin pulled. I should have thrown the damn thing across the room, but morbid curiosity won out. Her carefully curated world was about to blow up, and I was going to have a front row seat. Dinner will be late, babe. Drinks turn into work stuff. Hugs and kisses. The text from Jason was bland enough, but the timing, it fit perfectly. I forced a weary smile in the mirror as my mind whirred, piecing together the next move. Emily might have been queen bee, but I was about to become the puppet master. Sarah was the perfect pawn. I cornered her over bland lattes, all-concerned husband and furrowed brows. Em seemed stressed lately, I sighed, watching her eyes light up with gossip-fueled glee. Then came the first twist of the knife. You don't think Jason's, stepping out? I saw him at that Winnabar the other week, with someone who definitely wasn't a client. Sarah practically choked on her phone. She was addicted to drama, especially Emily's. Planting that seed had been ridiculously easy. Now it was time to sit back and enjoy the show. The change in Emily was fast and ugly. The manic laughter, the forced smiles, they were gone. Instead, I got suspicion, frantic phone calls, the way she traced my every move with those eyes. She thought she was the hunter, the one calling the shots. But I flipped the script, she was the prey, and I was enjoying the chase a bit too much. Sleep became this weird luxury I didn't have. When I wasn't playing the doting husband, my mind raced. Jason was at the gym yesterday. Weird, he mentioned a shoulder injury. A casually dropped comment over dinner. A flicker of panic in Emily's eyes that was oh so satisfying. It took a little less than 2 weeks for it all to implode. The whispers, the looks, Emily's pride turning to brittle desperation. I'd painted her into a corner with her own damn lies. Liar! The word cracked through the air. Emily's face blotchy with mascara and rage. We were finally facing the elephant in the room. The monster that had been festering under our picture-perfect marriage. My careful mask of injured innocence slicked just enough, replaced by a sliver of grim satisfaction. You see, I'd been waiting for this fight. I'd orchestrated every damn second of it. For too long, I'd let her call the shots, snipe from the sidelines while I swallowed my pride. But now the playing field was level, and it was brutal. Every lie, every meet-up with Jason, everything she thought she'd carefully hidden, I poured it all out. Watching her crumble, the realization dawning in those wide, panicked eyes. Damn, I won't pretend it didn't feel good. The house became a battlefield. Smashed plates, overturned furniture, and her designer heels kicked across the room. I matched her scream for scream, the words ripping out of me. I was a tornado of fury and hurt. Finally, silence. It hummed heavy in the air, broken only by her ragged sobs. I'd stripped Emily bare, the queen bee with no crown, her hive of loyal followers scattered to the wind. The taste of victory was bitter in my mouth. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then came the choice. It would have been easier to slam the door, to leave her with the wreckage of our marriage. But that's not who I am, and it wouldn't erase the pain. Fix this, I said coldly. We fix this together, or you walk away. Your call. The ball was, quite literally, thrown into her court. I retreated to the guest bedroom, locking the door behind me. The silence on my side was even more deafening. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering why the hell I didn't feel better. The next morning, I emerged like a soldier surveying a bombed-out wasteland. Broken dishes littered the kitchen floor, a stark reminder of the fight. Emily was gone, probably holed up with whatever remnant of her clique would still talk to her. Our house, once a gleaming symbol of our success, felt cold and hollow. Emily's manic energy was replaced by chilling silence. We moved past each other like ghosts, avoiding eye contact, the unspoken accusations hanging in the air. The whispers reached me before the official news. A sideways look at the grocery store, hushed conversations at our son's soccer practice that fell silent when I approached. It wasn't the affair itself that got the tongues wagging, it was my twist of the knife. The way I'd used Emily's own tactics against her. Small-town gossip was a vicious beast, and I was now its latest target. The worst part was seeing the confusion in our son's eyes. He wasn't old enough to understand the complexities of betrayal, just that his once solid world was crumbling. I tried to shield him, but kids are perceptive. The strained smiles and whispered arguments behind closed doors, he felt it. The holidays were a disaster. Christmas dinner at Emily's parents' house felt more like a court-martial. Her mother glared at me with barely concealed disgust, while her father remained stoically silent. Sarah, Emily's sister, was the surprise wild card. She took my side, the righteous indignation in her eyes mirroring my own simmering anger. It was a small victory in a sea of judgment. My brother, bless his soul, became my rock. He dragged me out for beers, forced me to watch mindless sports, anything to stop me from spiraling into self-pity. This isn't who you are, man, he'd say, and I'd want to believe him, except I wasn't so sure anymore. My nights became a blur of legal jargon. The divorce lawyer, with his slick suits and dispassionate smile, was my new confidant. He spoke in clauses and percentages, translating the wreckage of our marriage into cold, hard facts. Paperwork became my obsession. Every betrayal painstakingly documented, dates and receipts and carefully worded accusations. This wasn't just divorce, it was an autopsy. Emily tried, in her own weak way. Tearful apologies whispered after our son was asleep, desperate promises that things could change. But my heart had turned to stone. I'd seen the monster lurking under her polished facade, and no amount of pretty words would erase that. Spotting Jason in the cereal aisle felt like a twisted victory lap. He looked haggard, eyes haunted. Mr. Hotshot, reduced to darting, nervous glances and a hurried retreat to the frozen food section. Maybe he was feeling the heat. Maybe he and Emily were done. I didn't care enough to find out. Then Sarah's world blew up too. Her husband, always quiet and seemingly tolerant of her meddling ways, had finally had enough. Gossip turned vicious. There were whispers of an affair, of years hidden behind her judgmental eyes. It was ugly, messy, and I felt a small flicker of satisfaction. Karma, maybe, or maybe it was just that misery loved company. Finally, the summons came. Courtroom dates, deadlines, the legal system grinding our lives into a fine paste. I steeled myself, practiced the cold, emotionless demeanor the lawyer suggested. But walking into that courtroom was like stepping into a minefield. Emily, dressed in severe black like she was mourning our marriage, shot me a venomous look. The mediator droned on, dissecting our life together with clinical precision. Assets, custody, the ruins of what we built spread out for all to see. Each lie confirmed, each promise broken. It was brutal. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt empty, and even though I'd meticulously plotted every step, it didn't make any of it hurt less. The divorce decree was like a death certificate for a life that was already over. The judge's board droned. The legalese I barely understood, translated in my head to one simple phrase: it's done. The house, once a symbol of our supposed success, sold in a blur of paperwork and curt real estate agent meetings. I couldn't face packing up the ruins of our old life, hired movers to strip the place bare. Seeing our wedding photo tossed unceremoniously into a box, the delicate frame cracking, was a fitting image of how easily it had all fallen apart. My new apartment was functional, not a home. Cheap furniture, bare walls, a mattress on the floor. Every bleak surface screamed bachelor pad, but it mirrored my mindset at the time. Strict down, starting over from zero. Emily's texts arrived erratically, sometimes desperate apologies, other times angry rants blaming me for everything. I mostly ignored them, but a few times, in the quiet of the night, the guilt gnawed at me. Work was a godsend. I threw myself into projects, taking on extra hours, the exhaustion a dulling ache rather than a sharp sting of loneliness. Structure was my shield against the emotional chaos raging inside me. Then came the evening I cracked. Staring at takeout containers and another late night at the office, something inside me snapped. I called my brother. "I need a beer." I croaked out, the words catching in my throat. It wasn't the alcohol I craved. It was simply not being alone. We didn't solve anything that night, just nursed bottles and talked in circles. He brought up therapy. I scoffed, insisted I was fine. But later, alone in my empty, echoing apartment, I scrolled through names, my finger hovering over the book appointment button. It felt like defeat, like admitting I wasn't the strong, silent type who handled his own crap. It also felt like a lifeline, however thin. Dr. Evans had the bland, calming energy of a kindergarten teacher and the unnerving focus of a hawk. Turns out, bearing your soul to a complete stranger is every bit as awkward and painful as you'd expect. Those first therapy sessions were a blur of mumbled half-truths and forced smiles. But then, like a crack in a carefully constructed dam, the words started to flow. Rage, hurt, and the bitterness I'd swallowed for years spilled out of me. I confessed the sleepless nights, the fantasies of a grand confrontation I knew I'd never have. Dr. Evans didn't judge, just listened, occasionally prompting me to dig deeper. It was like lancing a festering wound, ugly, messy, but a strange sort of relief came with it. Co-parenting was its own special kind of hell. Each handover of our son felt like a tense hostage exchange, full of stilted pleasantries and thinly veiled hostility. One time, amidst the chaos of schedules and forgotten lunchboxes, Emily's composure cracked. "We're ruining his life," she whispered, the desperation in her eyes mirroring my own. It was a fleeting moment, gone just as quickly, but it rattled me. Nights were the worst. Sleep became this cruel game of what-ifs. What if I'd confronted her sooner? What if I'd fought harder? Or what if I'd simply walked away the first time I felt that gnawing doubt? Every path led to the same conclusion: a broken marriage and a future as uncertain as the dawn. News of Emily's downgrade at work reached my ears through the twisted grapevine of our small town. A pity part of me felt vindicated. Her high-powered career, fueled by her need to be admired, had come crashing down alongside her perfect life image. Then I saw her at a coffee shop, of all places. No fancy suit, no meticulously applied makeup. Her hair had lost its salon sheen. There were shadows under her eyes. A flicker of vulnerability, the kind I'd rarely seen. For a crazy moment, an echo of the girl I fell in love with years ago. Not the bitter, resentful woman she'd become. It took everything in me not to walk over, to offer a simple, "You okay?" But I didn't. Some wounds couldn't be fixed with a kind word. Our son's letter hit me like a physical blow. The shaky handwriting, the misspelled pleas for us to, "Please stop fighting." It was a brutal reminder that this wasn't just about us anymore. Shame twisted in my gut. All my anger, all the petty games, and he was the one paying the price. The coffee with Emily wasn't my idea. Our son had orchestrated it, with the innocent bluntness only kids possess. It was stiff, filled with too many silences, but we managed a few basic exchanges about school drop-offs and upcoming doctor's appointments. It wasn't a reconciliation, but it was a start. Then there was the moment. It came out of nowhere. An old, dumb joke we had. The kind so ridiculously stupid that I'd forgotten it altogether. Emily mumbled it under her breath, and for just a second, we both laughed. Genuine laughter. It was over as fast as it had begun, the silence returning with an almost physical weight. But there was a flicker of something in her eyes, a shared memory of a time before all this bitterness. I didn't try to fix it, didn't slide my hand across hers, didn't whisper promises we both knew we'd break. This wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a shift, a tiny lessening of the tension that had defined our every interaction. His birthday party was like walking through a funhouse, bright noise and forced cheer, a stark contrast to the turmoil roiling underneath. Emily and I kept our distance, the truce still fragile. Yet, when our son tricked and scraped his knee, something instinctual snapped. For a few minutes, it wasn't me versus her. It was simply parents rushing to their child, a shared moment of worry pushing aside our war. That night, lying on the same uncomfortable mattress in the spare apartment, I didn't feel any closer to closure. But maybe, just maybe, there was a path forward. Not backwards, not to the way things were, but a way we could exist in the same space for the sake of the little boy who'd sent a desperate and heartfelt plea for peace. A year. It felt like a decade in the blink of an eye all at once. The anniversary of our divorce wasn't something I celebrated, but it was a milestone nonetheless, a marker of survival. My apartment was starting to feel less like a temporary shelter and more like a grudgingly accepted home. Scrolling through social media one night, I stumbled upon a photo that made my stomach lurch. It was Jason and Sarah, stiff and posed at some generic work function. They both looked thinner, the smiles gone from their eyes. They were a miserable mirror image of Emily and me not too long ago. I won't lie. A wave of dark satisfaction washed over me. Revenge is a dish best served cold, as they say. Then came the gut punch. My sister, with her uncanny ability to send photos I didn't want but needed to see, texted a snap of Emily and our son. But they weren't alone. A man, casually dressed, tousled hair, stood with them, his arm casually around Emily's shoulders. They were smiling, all three of them, with a genuine ease that stung. Twisting the knife, Emily's text arrived late that night. Thank you. Just those two words, no explanation, no context. But I knew this was her way of acknowledging that our son was happier, that the ceasefire we'd crafted was working. It wasn't the grand apology I'd imagined in those rage-fueled early days, but it was something. Running into Sarah at the bookstore was odd. We made eye contact, then both awkwardly pretended to be fascinated by the true crime section. A stilted exchange of, "How are you?" and "We're doing okay." It wasn't friendly, but the simmering hatred of a year ago had mellowed into a sort of neutral disinterest. The hearing was surprisingly amicable for something that involved lawyers and our broken lives. Emily and I sat on the same side of the courtroom, making adjustments to our son's schedule. We spoke in clicked sentences, functional and focused solely on his needs, not our past wreckage. It was a victory, I supposed, but a victory that left me with an odd hollowness. Walking out of court, I saw Emily with the man from the photo, real smile playing on her lips. I turned away, a surge of something, envy, regret, maybe a little relief, rising and falling within me. Closure wasn't a light bulb moment, it seemed. It was a